Amora was 9 years old when the world stopped making sense. She stood between two fresh graves, her small hand clutching a yellow flower, her mother's favorite. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained gray, heavy with the kind of sadness that makes breathing difficult. "Come, child," her grandmother said, wrapping a thin arm around her shoulders. "We must talk." That evening, sitting on a woven mat in her grandmother's small room, Amora learned that everything would change. "Your Uncle Bod has agreed to take you," her grandmother said, her voice cracking like dry wood. "I am too old, too sick. I cannot give you what you need: school fees, food, a future. I can stay with you, Grandma. I don't need much." Her grandmother's eyes filled with tears. "Uncle Bod has a good house in the city. He has a shop. He says you will go to school there. You will have opportunities." Amora wanted to say that she didn't care about opportunities. She wanted to stay in the only place where her parents' laughter still echoed in the corners. But she saw the pain in her grandmother's face and swallowed her words. 3 days later, Uncle Bod came in a dusty car that coughed black smoke. He was a large man with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Oh, little Amora. You've grown. Come, we have a long journey." Her grandmother held her tight. "Be good. Study hard. Make your parents proud." Amora nodded, not trusting her voice. As the car pulled away, she watched her grandmother become smaller and smaller until she disappeared completely. Uncle Bod's house was bigger than anything Amora had ever seen. 3 floors, painted bright yellow with brown trimmings. Inside, the floors were tiled and cool. "This is your room," he said, opening a door to a small space at the back of the house, near the kitchen. It had a thin mattress on the floor and one small window with bars. Aunt Jumok, his wife, appeared in the doorway. She was a thin woman with sharp features and eyes that looked through Amora rather than at her. "So this is the orphan," she said, her voice flat. "I hope you know how to work. We are not running a charity here." I can walk," Amora whispered. "Good. Wake up at 5. The house doesn't clean itself." That first night, Amora lay on the thin mattress, listening to strange sounds: cars honking, people shouting, music from somewhere far away. She missed the quiet of her grandmother's place, the sound of crickets, the gentle rustling of palm trees. She cried silently into her pillow until sleep finally came. Morning came too quickly. "Get up. What are you still doing there?" Aunt Jumok's voice cut through the darkness. Amora jumped up, disoriented. It was still dark outside. "Sweep the compound. Wash those dishes from last night. And make sure you do it properly, not like some lazy village girl." The work never stopped. Sweep. Washington scrub. Cook. Fetch water. Wash clothes. Clean the shop. By the time night came, Amora's small hands were raw and her back ached. "When will I start school?" she asked Uncle Bod one evening. He looked up from his phone, irritated. "School? You think school is free? You think money grows on trees?" "But," Grandma said, "your grandmother is a foolish old woman who doesn't understand how the world works. You want to go to school. First, you work. You earn your keep. Maybe next year." But next year never came. Months passed. The work grew harder. Aunt Jumok's words became sharper, like small knives. "Useless child. Your parents should have taught you better. Maybe that's why God took them." Those words hurt more than the slaps that sometimes came when Amora was too slow, when she broke a plate, when she forgot to add salt to the soup. Uncle Bod's shop sold building materials: cement, rods, paint. Amora spent her afternoons there, arranging stock, cleaning, running errands. Men came and went, making deals, counting money. Some of them looked at her with pity. None of them asked questions. It started 3 months after she arrived. Uncle Bod came to her room late at night, when Aunt Jumok had gone to visit her mother in another part of the city. "Are you comfortable here?" he asked, sitting on a mattress. The smell of alcohol hung heavy around him. Yes, Uncle, Amora said, pulling her thin blanket closer. Good. You know, I've been very kind to you. Fed you. Gave you shelter. Not many men would do that for an orphan. Thank you, Uncle. His hand reached out and touched her head, her shoulder. Something in his touch made her skin crawl. You should be grateful, he said, his voice different now, thick, strange. That night, he beat her for the first time. His belt left marks on her back, her arms. When she cried, he covered her mouth. If you tell anyone, I would throw you out. You die on the streets like a rat. Do you understand? Amora nodded, tears streaming down her face. It happened again. And again. Each time Anjumok traveled, each time Uncle Bod came home drunk, each time the darkness gave him cover. He would tie her hands with rope so she couldn't fight back. The beatings became routine. Sometimes he used his belt. Sometimes his hands. Sometimes whatever was near, a stick, a wire, a wooden spoon. This is to teach you respect, he would say. This is what happens to ungrateful children. Amora learned to cry silently. She learned to hide her bruises under long sleeves even in the hot season. She learned to move carefully, slowly, so nothing would hurt more than it already did. She thought about running away, but where would she go? Her grandmother was too far, too old, too poor. She had no money, no one to call, nowhere to hide. So she endured. She survived. She became a ghost in the house, moving through her chores mechanically, speaking only when spoken to, disappearing into herself. 1 year became 2. Amora turned 11, then 12. Her body began to change in ways she didn't understand. Uncle Bod noticed. The beatings became worse. More frequent. More violent. He would come to her room, lock the door, and the terror would begin again. You're growing up, he said one night, his eyes scanning her in a way that made her want to disappear. Soon you'll be a woman. Then came the night that changed everything. Anjumok had traveled again. Uncle Bod came home late, stumbling, reeking of alcohol. Amora heard his footsteps and felt her heart begin to race. He burst into her room without knocking. Get up, he shouted. She scrambled to her feet. Before she could speak, his hand struck her face so hard she fell. You think you can look at me like that? With those judging eyes? Like you're better than me? I didn't. I wasn't. The beating that followed was the worst yet. He used his belt, then his fists, then his boots. He tied her hands to the bed frame so she couldn't protect herself. The pain was everywhere, her face, her ribs, her back, her arms. When he finally left, Amora lay coiled on the floor, barely breathing. Blood trickled from her nose, her lip. Her eye was swelling shut. In that moment, broken and bleeding, something shifted inside her. She realized she had two choices: stay and die slowly, or run and maybe survive. She chose to run. At dawn, before anyone woke, Amora gathered her few belongings, a photo of her parents, one dress, a pair of worn slippers. She climbed out the small barred window, scraping her arms, not caring about the pain. She ran. The city was waking up, traders setting up stores, buses rumbling to life, hawkers calling out their wares. Amora moved through the crowds like a wounded animal seeking shelter. She had nowhere to go. That first day, she walked until her feet bled. She found herself at a motor park, a chaotic place where buses and taxis fought for space. In one corner, near an overflowing gutter, she found a cardboard box. It became her home. The streets taught her new lessons. Hunger that gnawed like a living thing. Cold that seeped into her bones at night. Fear that never left. She begged. Please, more. Please, sir. Just more money for food. Some people gave her coins. Most looked away. Some called her a nuisance. Go away. You children, always disturbing people. Go and find work. At night, she hid in her cardboard box near the gutter, covering herself with old newspapers. The smell was terrible, rotting garbage, human waste, decay. But it was better than Uncle Boat's house. She learned to avoid the area boys, young men who roamed the motor park, preying on the weak. But one day, they found her. Oh, small girl. You dey beg money here. This now our territory. Give us what you get. Please, I need it for food. The tallest one snatched a few coins from her hand. Food. You think say we no hungry. Next time, you go give us half of everything. You understand? Amora nodded, tears rolling down her dirty face. These bled together. Wake up. Beg. Hide from danger. Try to find food. Sleep. Survive. She barely ate, maybe once a day, if she was lucky. Sometimes she found leftover food in garbage bins near restaurants. Sometimes a kind person bought her bread. Her body grew thinner. Her clothes became rags. Her hair matted. People stopped seeing her as a child and started seeing her as part of the trash that decorated the streets. 2 months passed. 3. 4. Amora began to forget what hope felt like. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where the sun was already angry by 8 o'clock. Amora sat at her usual spot near the motor park, hand outstretched, voice hoarse from calling out. Most people rushed past, late for work, lost in their own worlds. Then a car stopped nearby, a small blue sedan. A woman stepped out, carrying a leather bag and wearing a crisp white shirt and black trousers. She looked professional, purposeful. But something made her pause. She turned and saw Amora, truly saw her. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something passed between them. Recognition. Not of faces, but of something deeper. Humanity acknowledging humanity. The woman walked over. What's your name? She asked gently, crouching down to Amora's level. Amora's first instinct was to lie, to run, to protect herself. But something in this woman's eyes, something kind, something real, made her answer truthfully. Amora. How old are you, Amora? 12. I think. I'm not sure anymore. The woman's face changed. Pain flickered across it. Where are your parents? Dead. Car accident. 2 years ago. And you live here? On the streets. Amora nodded. Why? Don't you have family? Someone to take care of you? And there it was, the question that opened the dam. All the pain, all the fear, all the secrets she'd carried alone came pouring out. She told the woman everything. About Uncle Bod. About the work that never ended. About the beatings. About the nights of terror. About running away because staying meant dying. The woman listened without interrupting, her eyes growing wet with tears. My name is Folek, she said when Amora finished. I'm a lawyer. And I promise you this, what happened to you was not your fault. What that man did to you is called abuse, and it's a crime. You did nothing wrong. Amora stared at her, trying to process these words. But, he said I was ungrateful. He said I deserved it. No child deserves to be beaten. No child deserves to live in fear. That man lied to you, Amora. He hurt you because he could, because he thought no one would stop him. But I'm going to stop him. Folek didn't just make promises. She acted. First, she took Amora to a hospital. The doctors examined her, documenting the scars, the healed fractures, the signs of long-term abuse. They took photographs. They wrote reports. Amora had never been treated with such gentleness. The nurses cleaned her wounds, fed her, spoke to her like she mattered. You're safe now, they kept saying. But Amora had heard those words before. She didn't know if she could believe them yet. Folek arranged for Amora to stay at a shelter for children, a clean place with beds, food, and people who smiled without cruelty behind their eyes. Then began the legal battle. We are going to report this to the police, Folek explained. We are going to make sure your uncle faces justice. But I need you to be brave. Can you do that? Amora thought about all the times she'd been brave before, brave when her parents died, brave when Uncle Boat beat her, brave when she slept in gutters. She'd been brave her whole life. Yes, she said. I can be brave. The police station was intimidating, uniformed men and women moving around with authority. But Folek held Amora's hand throughout. I want to report a case of child abuse, Folek told the officer at the desk. The man barely looked up. Abuse? What kind of abuse? You know, family matters are complicated. This isn't a family matter. This is a crime. This child was beaten repeatedly, denied education, forced to work like a slave, and eventually forced to flee to the streets. I have medical evidence. I have her testimony. And I expect you to do your job. Something in Folek's voice, the still beneath the politeness, made the officer sit up straighter. A case was opened. Uncle Bod was not easy to find. When the police went to his house, he was gone. And Jumo claimed ignorance. That girl. She ran away. We treated her well, gave her everything. She was ungrateful, so she left. Now she wants to lie about us. But Folek was relentless. She gathered evidence, testimony from neighbors who'd heard screams, from shop assistants who'd seen Amora's bruises, from doctors who documented her injuries. She filed charges. Child abuse. Assault. Child labor. Neglect. Uncle Bod finally surfaced with his own lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who sneered at Folek. My client is a respected businessman. This is clearly a fabrication by a troubled child seeking attention. The case went to court. Amora had never seen a courtroom before. It was large and formal, with wooden benches and a judge sitting high above everyone. She felt small in this space, vulnerable. But Folek was beside her. Just tell the truth, she whispered. That's all you need to do. When Amora took the stand, her voice shook at first. She saw Uncle Bod sitting across the room, his face hard, his eyes boring into her with threats she could feel even from a distance. But she remembered something her mother used to say, the truth is like the sun. You can hide it for a while, but it always comes out. So she spoke. She told the judge about the walk, the beatings, the terror, the scars. She showed her arms, her back, the marks that hadn't faded. She described nights crying into her pillow, days going hungry, the feeling of being invisible. Uncle Bod's lawyer tried to discredit her. Isn't it true that you were a difficult child? That you refused to obey? That you lied frequently? No, Amora said, her voice growing stronger. I tried to be good. I tried to make them happy. But nothing I did was ever enough. Folek presented the medical evidence, the x-rays showing old fractures, the photographs of scars, the doctor's testimony about the pattern of injuries consistent with repeated abuse. She brought witnesses, a neighbor who'd heard crying, a shop assistant who'd seen Uncle Bod drag Amora by her hair, a woman from the market who'd given Amora food when she begged. The truth built like a wall, brick by brick, until it was undeniable. The judge was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much suffering. He listened carefully, taking notes, asking questions. When all the evidence was presented, he spoke. This court has heard testimony that is both heartbreaking and damning. We have seen evidence of systematic abuse, of a child betrayed by the very person entrusted with her care. He looked directly at Uncle Bod. Sir, you were given a sacred responsibility to protect a vulnerable orphan. Instead, you exploited her labor, denied her education, and subjected her to physical violence that left permanent scars. This is not discipline. This is not culture. This is cruelty. Uncle Bod tried to speak, but the judge raised his hand. The evidence is clear. The medical reports don't lie. The scars don't lie. This child's testimony is consistent, detailed, and corroborated by multiple witnesses. The courtroom was silent. I hereby find you guilty of child abuse, assault, and child labor violations. You are sentenced to 7 years in prison. Additionally, you are ordered to pay compensation to Miss Amora for the suffering you have caused. The gavel struck wood, and the sound echoed like thunder. Amora sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Uncle Bode was shouting, his lawyer arguing, but it was over. Folik wrapped her arms around Amora. You did it. You were so brave. Amora finally let herself cry, not tears of pain this time, but tears of release. For 2 years, she'd carried this weight alone. Now, finally, someone had listened. Someone had believed her. Someone had said, what happened to you was wrong. Justice hadn't erased the past, but it had acknowledged it. And sometimes, that's where healing begins. The shelter became Amora's temporary home. She had her own bed with clean sheets, 3 meals a day, and counselors who helped her process her trauma. Healing isn't fast, one counselor told her. Some days will be harder than others. But you're not alone anymore. Folik visited regularly. She brought books, clothes, and something more important, consistency. She showed up. She kept her promises. She proved that not all adults would betray Amora's trust. I've been thinking, Folik said one day, 6 months after the trial. About your future. About school. About where you live. Amora's heart raced. She'd learned not to hope too much. I've spoken with the shelter, with social services, with my family. If you're willing, I'd like to be your guardian. I'd like you to come live with me. Amora stared at her, unable to speak. You don't have to decide now, Folik continued. Take your time. Think about it. But I want you to know you deserve a home. A real one. Where you're safe, where you're valued, where you can just be a child. Why? Amora finally asked. Why would you do this for me? Folik's eyes glistened. Because every child deserves someone who fights for them. Because I see your strength, your resilience, your beautiful spirit that refused to break even when the world was cruel. Because when I saw you that day at the motor park, I couldn't look away. And I don't want to look away now. Amora felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hope. Yes, she whispered. I want to come live with you. 2 years later. Amora stood in a schoolyard wearing a crisp uniform, blue skirt, white shirt, black shoes. Her hair was neatly braided. Her face had filled out. She looked like what she was, a 14-year-old girl with her whole life ahead of her. She was in secondary school too, having caught up through determination and support. Her favorite subjects were English and civics. She wanted to be a lawyer like Folik. I want to help children like me, she told her guidance counselor. Children who think no one cares. At home, and it was truly home now, Folik had created a space where Amora could heal and grow. There were rules, yes, but also laughter. There were chores, but also homework help and movie nights and birthday celebrations. How was school? Folik asked that evening, as they prepared dinner together. Good. We're learning about human rights. The teacher asked if anyone knew someone who'd experienced injustice. Amora paused. I didn't raise my hand. Is that okay? Folik looked at her with understanding. Your story is yours. You share it when and how you want. There's no right or wrong. Later that night, Amora lay in her bed, in her room, in a house where she was safe. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who slept in a gutter, who thought she'd never escape, who believed she was worthless. She thought about Uncle Bode, who was still in prison. She didn't hate him anymore. She'd learned that hate was just another chain, and she'd had enough chains for one lifetime. She simply didn't think about him much at all. She thought about her parents, whose faces she could still remember if she closed her eyes tight enough. I'm okay, Mama, she whispered into the darkness. I'm going to be okay. Her grandmother had passed away a year ago, but not before Folik had driven Amora to see her one last time. The old woman had held her, crying, apologizing for sending her away. You did what you thought was best, Amora had told her. I forgive you. Now, in the quiet of her room, Amora opened her journal, a gift from Folik. She wrote, "Today I learned that justice is possible. Not always easy. Not always fast. But possible. I learned that one person who cares can change everything. I learned that my voice matters. I learned that being broken doesn't mean staying broken. I learned that I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." 5 years later, Amora walked onto a university campus, carrying her acceptance letter to study law. She was 19 now, confident in ways the 9-year-old girl could never have imagined. Folek had formally adopted her. On the papers, they were guardian and ward. In their hearts, they were mother and daughter. "I'm proud of you," Folek said, helping her move into the dormitory. "I wouldn't be here without you." "No," Folek corrected gently. "You would have found your way. I just helped clear the path. Your strength, your courage, that was always yours." Amora had become an advocate. She volunteered at the shelter where she'd once stayed, speaking to other children who'd survived abuse. She told them her story, not to define herself by it, but to show them that survival was possible, that healing was possible, that justice was possible. "You are not alone," she would tell them, the same words that had once saved her. "What happened to you was wrong. You deserved better. And you still deserve better now." One girl, maybe 11 years old with haunted eyes, asked her once, "Does it ever stop hurting?" Amora thought carefully before answering. "The pain becomes different. Not gone, but different. Like a scar instead of an open wound. Some days you barely notice it. Some days it aches. But you learn to carry it. And you learn that you're so much more than your pain." The girl nodded slowly, processing this truth. The law school years were challenging, but Amora thrived. She specialized in child protection and family law. She interned with legal aid organizations. She wrote papers about reforming child welfare systems. After graduation, she joined Folek's firm. Together, they built a practice focused on defending vulnerable children. They took cases that other lawyers avoided, cases with poor families, with children no one believed, with outcomes that weren't guaranteed. They won some cases. They lost others. But they never stopped fighting. Amora thought often about that Tuesday morning when Folek had stopped her car, when their eyes had met, when one person's decision to care had changed the trajectory of her life. She thought about how many children were still living the nightmare she'd escaped, children in homes where they suffered in silence, children on streets where the world looked through them, children who believed the lie that they didn't matter. She couldn't save them all. But she could save some. And that had to be enough. This story is dedicated to every child who has survived abuse, who has fought for their voice to be heard, who has refused to let cruelty define them. If you are that child, you matter. What happened to you was wrong. It was not your fault. You deserve safety, love, and justice. If you know that child, stop. Listen. Believe. Act. Sometimes one person who cares can change everything. If you are someone who can help, there are children waiting for someone like Folek, someone who won't look away, who will fight for them, who will show them that the world can be different. The story of abuse is always painful. But the story doesn't have to end there. Sometimes, justice comes. Sometimes, healing happens. Sometimes, the broken places become the strongest. Sometimes, a girl who once had nothing finds everything. And sometimes, she uses what she found to light the way for others. May we all be people who stop the car, who ask the questions, who fight the battles, who refuse to look away.